Hey, everybody. I am thrilled to have Adam Young with us again today. Adam was with us last year. And Adam, just say hi real fast because I have a couple things I want to tell people about you.
Hi, everyone. It's great to be here.
Yes. So if you did not have the opportunity to listen to the recording that we did last year with Adam, you have to. I re-listened to it yesterday in preparation for this conversation, and I was just struck again by Adam, the level of compassion and empathy. You said a sentence almost right at the very beginning that I cried. I was not anticipating crying. And you said this sentence, this validating sentence, that we as caregivers need to understand that we bear in our bodies a higher degree of suffering than most parents do. And just that recognition that you gave, I mean, to have somebody else validate what I felt to be true, but wasn't sure was true, to have you tell me that all those 20 years that I was Matthew's mom with his serious mental illness, that I did indeed carry some suffering in
Mhm.
my body that other parents did not. Well, I cried. It's making me tear up just to say it right now. And I didn't even know how much I needed that, how much I needed that to be seen so clearly and validated and affirmed. So if you are watching this today and you did not get a chance to watch or listen that from last year, I really encourage you to do so because I think your soul will grow, and I think you will walk away feeling like somebody gets my journey. And just that gave me strength kind of to keep going. And so today, I want to talk to Adam about a book that he released earlier this year. It is this Make Sense of Your Story. And the subtitle is Why Engaging Your Past with Kindness Changes Everything. Adam, I have read it. I have underlined at least 50%, if not more. I'm going to reread it. It has just sparked such curiosity in myself. I would say I'm somebody I've spent a lot of money on therapy. Let's just say I've paid for somebody's yacht in the Mediterranean. I'm sure I have. With the amount of therapy that I have paid for through the years. And I think the way that you frame some of the issues that we live with, I've been waiting a long time and I didn't even know it. So I can't wait to have this conversation with you. The way that you encourage people to engage their own story, I feel like for me is going to make me a better wife, better mom, better sister, better boss. My employees will be really happy about that. A better friend and a better Christ follower in this world. So that's why I wanted to have you back. I just feel like what you have to share is very, very powerful. So welcome.
Thank you.
I know that was a long hello and glad you're here, but I just really want to our audience to know that what you have to say is valuable and that they need to pay attention. I think it will give them so much encouragement and hope. So first of all, when you use the phrase story that's in the subtitle of your book, I just want you to really talk a little bit about what you mean by story, because I think when I hear that, if I didn't have any context, if I hadn't read your book, if I didn't listen to your podcast, I think that I would hear the story and I would think, what do you mean by story? I don't haven't lived this wild adventure, where I've got a story. Or I haven't necessarily, or our listeners might think, I haven't experienced any like big T trauma. So when you talk about story, we're like, it's unimpressive. I don't really
Mhm.
have anything. What do you mean? That isn't what you're talking about. You mean something very different.
Yes. When I invite you to engage your story, it would be better to make it plural, stories,
Mm,
because each one of us has many stories, particularly during our growing up years in our families of origin. And they are stories of either heartache, harm, tragedy, abuse that have really moved us and changed our brains because our brains are a function of the experiences we've had in life, genetics, and the experiences we've had in life. And very often, each person has stories that have not been well cared for. They haven't been witnessed
Mm.
by others. And when I say stories, what do I mean? I mean the time you were 10 years old and you had a birthday party and your father came home drunk and humiliated you in front of all your friends. That's a story. Now, it's just a very short telling, very short description. That needs to be fleshed out with particularity. What I mean is, all of us have memories. And even if we don't remember very many things, what will you do with what you do remember? Will you write out and share one or two of the stories that you remember from your growing up years? And you may be a 58-year-old woman, but you still remember that thing that happened.
Mm.
And it's never been witnessed, it's never been engaged, or you haven't been named well in the context of that story. You were 8 years old and now you're 58. And why is it that you still hold that story? Well, you hold it because it matters. And that's what I really want to invite people to grapple with, is that your stories matter and they tell me something about your heart and about who you are and who you were created to be in this world.
Mm. But why is that so important? I mean, genuinely, why I can just hear the response of even when I've talked about story work, or, if you explored your story, just, I mean, I'm no expert, but just, I'm so fascinated now. And when I mention it, I just kind of often get a very blank look of why, why would
Yeah.
I do that? And then I think in the context of our Breathe community, where many of our parents live in such chaotic,
Hmm.
difficult, painful situations, that so much of their attention is on the needs of their child,
Yes.
that to this just feels frou-frou. It feels something that you do when your life's in, you're maybe it's your end of your life and you're retired, and now you're looking back, and you've got your little drink with the umbrella, and you're sitting on a beach in Hawaii, and you have this time to reflect. How does this help? How is this? Why would any of our parents even give a second of their time right now to talk and look at themselves about stories?
Yes. Because the nature of, for so many of the parents in the Breathe community, the nature of your life is that you are so preoccupied by extremity because of the circumstances of your life with a mentally ill child, that the idea of attending to or attuning to your own self as a boy or a girl, it either feels impossible, like you simply don't have the time to do it, or it feels superfluous, like it's
Yeah,
just not that important.
yeah,
And what I want to say is to plead with you that if you want to be a better parent to your children, a better spouse to your spouse, a better friend to your friends, you have to grapple with the stories that have shaped you, and especially the stories of harm that have shaped you, because those stories are directly linked to the neurons in your brain that filter all of your experiences. So there's a lot of neuroscience research, Kay, that shows that if you want to be a better parent, whether you have a mentally ill child or not, the number one thing you can do to grow in a parent as a parent has nothing to do with interacting differently with your children.
huh,
It has everything to do with the degree to which you have made sense of your own developmental story, because we are all driven by hidden persuaders, deep parts of our hearts that were harmed as children, and none of us escape harm. That's just part of living in this world. Deep parts of our heart that were harmed and that are filtering all of our experiences in our present day life. So I think that your life and that the God of the Bible wants you to take your story seriously. Now, I know that that's a big ask for a parent that is preoccupied with, like I said, extremity.
yeah,
And I think that you need to, the term that's thrown out a lot is self-care. Fine.
yeah,
If you want to use that term, fine. I'm
yeah,
not against it.
yeah,
But I'm inviting you to, like, Your heart, your body needs care, it needs attunement, it needs attention. That's just what it means to be created in the image of a triune God. And we and not an I, which means I am built for relationship. My story needs to be told, it needs to be witnessed, it needs to be heard, it needs to be engaged. I need that. And so do all of the parents in your Breathe community.
I think you made a statement there that to change your I'm going to mess it up, but I think you said to change your relationship with your child, or
Mhm.
what kind of a parent you are, isn't about you just necessarily trying harder, behaving differently. I have
No.
been down that road so many times. It
Yeah.
rarely has been effective, and then I've left with a lot of frustration. For me, I'm left with a lot of regret of things that I wish I had done differently with not just my son who had mental illness, but my other two children.
Yes.
The kind of parent I so wanted to be, and sometimes was successful, and yet I, at this point in my life, also feel deep pain of ways that I have not and was not. And for you to say that the key was not me trying harder or just being even a better Christian, if you will, or being more mature, or whatever, you tie it to something completely different, something that in some ways actually feels like it actually has more, that I actually have more control.
Yeah.
I just trying harder is so rarely enough. So
Mhm.
talk to us, just talk about, go into a little bit of the common reasons why people say, okay, I hear you're making this, but you hear my reasons why, the objections why people say, but I can't, or I shouldn't,
Right.
or I
Right.
don't want to, or what. Just talk a little bit more about anybody who's listening to this and already putting up the barriers of like, nope, I'm not going there.
Sure. I mean, a lot of people feel, especially Christian folks, feel like engaging their own story is like introspective navel gazing, that it's unbiblical, that it's just not loving. It's not, it's self-centered. And here's what I would say about that. The neuroscience research is really clear that people who spend significant time reflecting on their past have increased ability to empathize with others and to care for others. In
Hmm.
other words, exploring your past story increases your capacity to love others well.
Wow.
And at the same time, biblically speaking, or just theologically, like understanding your story is not an end in itself. I mean,
Yeah.
deep down, all of us intuitively, I think we know we are made for more than healing. Healing is beautiful. And Jesus is in the business of healing hearts, healing bodies. And there is more. And so let me say this, the ultimate purpose of engaging your story is to discover who you have uniquely been created to be and what you are meant to do during your time in the Psalmic language, in the land of the living. So, said another way, the purpose of engaging your story is to discover your kingdom. And every single listener out there has a kingdom. In Luke 22, Jesus says to his disciples, and by extension to you and to me, I confer on you a kingdom. So each one of the listeners has a kingdom over which you rule. And that includes all the people that you impact by the unique ways that you love. And you love in a unique way. It includes all the ways you bring beauty into your corner of the world, all the ways that you shape order out of chaos. So, Kay, your kingdom is different from mine. And this is true not because we have different gifting, although we do. It's because we have different stories.
Hmm.
So, if you want to identify the particularities of the kingdom that Jesus has conferred on you, you've got to understand your past story. And this is because the verse for me is Genesis 50, verse 20. Joseph speaks it. It is intended, in my opinion, to be a banner over every human life. And that is what evil meant
That's right.
for darkness, for
Yeah.
destruction, God meant for good. And so every listener to this episode needs to understand that you were assaulted. You have been assaulted by the kingdom of darkness precisely in the areas where you most bear glory, goodness, beauty.
Mm.
And everyone needs to know how they have been harmed so that they can understand who they are and what they were created to do.
Yeah, that's the section I highlighted about 10 times. Because I think to recognize that painful things or painful stories happen to all of us, um, it's just easy to chalk it up to, well, we live in a broken world, we live in a
Yes.
fallen world, things don't go well here, we know that, and just sort of with a little bit of a shrug, kind of like,
Yes.
we
Yes.
all we all have had hard things, and we
Yes.
just kind of try to level the playing field of mine. What happened to me is not any worse than what happened to you. For whatever avoidant, we don't want to feel the pain. You can tell us more about that, but we don't want to feel the pain. We don't want to have to acknowledge that our primary caregivers, our family of origin, hurt us. That's just
Mm.
whew, all the excuses, they did the best they could, all those different things. For all those reasons that we don't want to really look at what's happened to us. But when you say and you frame it as, no, you have been assaulted by evil, and that
Yes.
does not necessarily mean that you have had big T trauma, but you
Mm-mm.
lived in a world in which evil has rule and reign, and you have been assaulted by evil, and it was meant to diminish.
Yes.
It meant to diminish, destroy, disturb, all of those things, who God made you to be, and
Yes.
therefore is worth and worthy of exploration and our curiosity. That
Yes.
gives to me a different reason to look. It's not so that I can I don't know, feel happier or whatever, which sometimes feels like who's got time for that? Or that's I'm above that or whatever.
Mhm.
But to really know that God's purpose for me on earth was messed with, and
Yes.
and that it's ongoing.
Yes. Yes. And the other thing I would add, Kay, there's a passage in Jeremiah 6, it's repeated in Jeremiah 8, where God actually gets rather angry at the leadership of Israel. And here's why. Prophets and priests alike all practice deceit, it says. And then God says this, they dress the wounds of my people as though they were not serious, saying, peace, peace, everything's fine,
Yeah.
when everything is not fine, when there is no peace. And sadly, many of us do that with our own wounds. We dismiss them, we minimize them, we dress them as though they were not serious. We say, I don't have time for that. And I get it. I understand, especially for people in the Breathe community, you are in the midst of extremity on a daily basis. And I'm pleading with you. I want to invite you to ponder whether God would like you to dress your own wounds as though they were serious, because I
Mm,
think God does.
mm. Wow. Um, you talk so much about the body.
Mm.
I bet you if you had to keep a record of how many times a day you use the word body or story, I mean, they might be in competition for each other, but there's a reason for that. And you have a quote about the body when you say that the body is, our bodies are truth tellers. You used that
Mhm.
phrase a few minutes ago, hidden persuaders that I
Mhm.
that I was not familiar with. But you talk about our bodies are truth tellers, and I like this phrase. You say that our bodies are a trustworthy prophet from within that is
Mhm.
always with us.
Mhm.
Growing up in evangelical church, and one of the places the enemy really tried to harm me was so much shame around
Mhm.
my body,
Yes.
and in every way you can think of, my
Mhm.
body was shameful,
Mhm.
and yet the way that you talk about it and talk about our bodies are truth tellers, many of us have gotten used to just ignoring what our
Yes.
bodies say. Well, first of all, we don't even know our bodies are talking to us. We don't realize there's any meaning or
Mhm.
any significance to responses or to how we feel. You talk to us about that. You tell us. I'm just saying I recognize something new that has opened up my mind in a completely different way.
Yeah, I think Christians especially need to come to terms with something. You have a body. You have a beautiful, brilliant
Yeah.
body. Now, what do I mean by body? Well, you have sensations
Mhm.
in your gut, in your heart, in your back, in your pelvis. We have sensations all the time. You may be disconnected from those sensations, but they're there and you can get reconnected to them. So to be a human being is to always have bodily sensations. And
Mm.
I think those sensations are speaking to you at any given moment of the day. What do I mean by that? Well, when you have a gut sensation or a hurt feeling in your heart, or let's just take the risk that the parents in the Breathe community bear every day of, is there going to be violence in my home?
Yes.
Right? You
Yes.
the and you're always attuned to, and you're tracking with your child, and you can see, and your body will start to feel different things depending on how well he
Yeah.
or she is doing.
Yes.
Right? You have
Yes.
sensations in your body, and those are telling you, uh-oh, uh-oh, this is not going in a good direction.
Yeah.
How do you tend to your own body when it begins to get dysregulated in those moments? That is so important
Yeah.
for parents of children with mental illness, because your body is suffering at very many moments of the day dysregulation
Yeah.
as you notice something in your child that gives you pause and gives you concern. So I want to invite the parents to begin to listen
Mm.
to their bodies. When I say it's a trustworthy prophet from within, all I mean is it's communicating with you. Those feelings in your chest, in your gut, the feelings that you have in your back, in your legs, those sensations are letting you know important things about two things: your present circumstances and your past story. And both are equally true. So when your child starts to do something that concerns you, that is telling you data, and you start to feel it in your body. That's telling you data about what's happening in your life right now, but it's also giving you clues, if you will be curious about them, about your past story,
Mm.
particularly with regard to danger, fear, hypervigilance, those things.
So once we start paying attention to
Mhm.
them, how do we interpret them?
Well, that's a great question, and it introduces the whole category again of story work. So you've got two categories for interpretation: what's happening in the present, and what this might be telling me about what's happened to me in the past. So, for example, let's take it out of the realm of parenting for a minute, just to the
Yeah.
realm of like romantic relationships. When your spouse or your partner gets a particular look on their face or a tone in their
Mhm.
voice, and you find yourself reacting what you would call disproportionately,
Yeah.
right? We
Yeah.
call those overreactions.
Yes.
They're not overreactions at all. Your brain doesn't overreact. Your brain is linking something in the present to memories in the past. And so when my wife gets certain tone in her voice or expression on her face, it connects me to wounds from my growing up years.
Yeah.
It connects me, in other words, to memory,
Yeah.
story.
That's a really interesting statement. Your brain doesn't overreact.
Mm-mm.
Hmm. I'm so used to even talking to myself and
Mhm.
say, you are overreacting.
That's right.
Particularly in my parenting, but sometimes even with Rick, if we're in one of those stuck places where we're
Yeah.
like going around for the 50,000th time. I mean, we're coming up, this is our 50th year of marriage, and we have been around, the wilderness sometimes for 40 years. On certain areas, we just go back and forth and back and forth and back and
Yeah.
forth and back and forth. And I might even say to myself, oh, I'm overreacting. Kay, stop that. You're overreacting.
Yeah. Yeah.
To frame that slightly differently, talk
Yes.
about that.
What I would want you to do is instead of Kay, stop it, I would want you to have this response. Kay, can we bring some curiosity and some kindness to why Rick's face or tone or words is evoking such big feelings in your body?
Yeah.
Can there be some curiosity and to invite Jesus in and to say, what's going on for me? But with a posture not of stop it or
Right.
get over it
Yeah.
or overcome it,
Yeah.
but a posture of, oh, oh, something big is going on in me
Mm.
about what he just said to me.
Mm.
Or bring it back to parenting.
Yeah.
Oh, like my child just did this to their sibling. And all of a sudden, I've got big feelings inside. What has been your relationship to those feelings as a boy or a girl? That's what I mean about curiosity. When have I felt these feelings before? Because the nature of our brains is that we have neurons, and neurons are linked to other neurons, which is why the present is linked to the past. So anytime I become afraid as a father, I have fears all the time as a father. And I don't have mentally ill children, but I have fears all the time. And the question is, what when have I felt these fears before? What's been my story, Kay, with regard to powerlessness, for example? That's a great question for your community.
Yeah.
The Breathe parents have experiences of powerlessness on a
Absolutely.
regular basis. So can this be a question that pulses? What have been your stories as a 10-year-old, 15-year-old
Mm.
with powerlessness in this world? Because all of you have had experiences of powerlessness. But
Yeah.
I want to know those stories, and I want those stories cared for and witnessed.
Mm. I was thinking in preparation for this, I was thinking of the phrase, speaking of curiosity and, within ourselves or even what we might ask of our spouse or our kids, that kind of a phrase, what happened to you? But typically we don't say it quite so gently or in a neutral way or in a caring way. I mean, I was just thinking of the ways that we, not just to ourselves, but to other people we love, kind of like we can say like, what happened to you?
Uh-huh.
Or we can say, what happened to you? Which
Yep.
sounds like, what happened? Or what happened to you?
Yes.
But all of those do not convey compassion or
Mm-mm.
kindness or
Mhm.
curiosity. They all imply judgment,
Mhm.
fear, sarcasm, like you are such a problem, or
Yes.
you are so broken, or you are
Yes.
so whatever. But to find a way to ask that of ourselves, that curiosity about, okay, yeah, what I am feeling very powerless right now. Where else have I felt that? And does that, rather than saying even judgmentally to myself, what happened to you? Or what
Yes.
happened? It's just such a completely different mindset.
Yes. And I go back to Romans 2, verse 4 often. It is the kindness of God that leads us to repentance. Now, if that's true, how is it that so many of us are more apt to have a posture of accusation towards ourselves, especially in our parenting? Oh
Yeah.
my gosh. I mean, in a given day, how many voices of accusation do you hear that you're a bad mother or a bad father? And what would it look like to begin to disrupt that accusation with kindness? And by
Mm.
kindness, what's
You're
going
not
on?
excusing. You don't mean
No,
excusing. You're not saying, "Oh, it's okay."
nope.
Everybody has a heart. You're not saying that. You're saying something different.
You cannot repent in a robust way if you do not understand why you're doing what you're doing as a parent. Most parenting is reactive.
Mm.
We get most parenting failures are a result of dysregulation in the body of the parent. This has been absolutely true for
Mm.
my parenting. When have regrets about my parenting, my body has been in a state of dysregulation when I have interacted with my son or daughter.
That's
And
good.
the question is, okay, Adam, can you bring some curiosity and kindness to understand why did your son Eli doing that thing dysregulate you so much that you then erupted in rage? What's the dysregulation about? And that takes me into my story.
So I, I'm hoping that this piques the curiosity within our parents, that they're not spending this time saying, "Oh, I don't have time for this," or "I could never get to this," and "I
Right.
don't have the energy." I hear you saying, and I would add to that plea of, you are so valuable as an individual. Yes, you have a major caregiving responsibility that is yours and you're carrying it. But that does not obliterate you as a person so dearly loved by God. And your job here on earth is not just to sacrifice yourself for your
Mhm.
child or your
Mhm.
children, but that you also have a claim, as you say, on God's love and His care and His tenderness. And I feel like if we are able to believe that, then this is not going to seem like an extraneous thing that you would add
Mhm.
to, like if you've got extra time, that actually so much of what we want for ourselves and our children and our spouses is, like you say, not even just wholeness, not even just healing, but to feel delighted in by God.
Yes. Yes. And to feel comforted by God.
Yeah. Yes.
15 minutes. It
Yeah.
is an act of defiance against the kingdom of evil
Yeah.
for parents of children with mental illness. Please hear this. It is an act of defiance against the kingdom of evil for you to take 15 minutes 3 times a week to tend to your own heartache, your own wounding, your own harm as a boy or a girl that you still bear in your body, and that I promise you is influencing your parenting. But don't mishear me. I'm not saying tend to your story so that you can be a better mother.
Yeah.
I am saying, although that will happen, I am
Yes.
saying tend to your story because you are a child of God
Mhm.
and your story matters. And I understand the child with the mental illness entering your world changed everything. And you've been reeling ever since. But what would it look like to defy
Hmm.
the work of evil that is designed to get you to be always preoccupied with fear, anxiety, the potential for danger. And look, I don't have a child with mental illness, so there's a limit, there's a ceiling on my ability to understand this, but not for you, Kay.
Hmm.
And I hear you calling your community to the same thing.
I just know that we not only carry the suffering of caring for our children, but we do carry such a heavy load of self recrimination, a
Yes.
term that I hear you use, a contempt,
Yeah.
for ourselves, because it doesn't even just fall into the, oh, I messed up, or why can't I get this right? I think when you keep running into that intractable wall of, no matter what I do, my child doesn't seem to get better. Maybe
Yeah.
they get worse. We
Yes.
watch their suffering increase, and we
Yes.
we absorb that into ourselves of, if only I were a better parent,
Right.
or I was a nicer person, or
Yeah.
I was a stronger Christian, if I
Yes.
could only apply all of this stuff, then
Yes.
my child's suffering would be less and my contempt for myself would be less. And we
Yeah.
just get into that place of unable to see our own, as you say, beauty, our own
Yes.
value, um, how deeply and dearly loved we are and how worthy we are to experience that from God. And so for me, this hits so it just hits in the core
Mhm.
kind of who I am, and wanting other parents to be relieved of some of that suffering. Some of it's unnecessary suffering.
Right. What you're talking about in my mind is the category of accusation.
Mm,
What would it look like for all of you parents to take out an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper, put it on your kitchen counter, and over the course of a day or two, just write down the 5 or 10 sentences of accusation that come up for you, particularly with regard to your parenting,
mm,
and get those sentences on paper. And you just listed 3 or 4 of them just now, Kay. But I want it to be particular to every one of the parents because evil
yeah.
assaults us in different ways. And then get those accusations on a piece of paper. And then every time you hear one of those voices in a day, just put a little tally mark
Hmm.
next to it. And then look at your paper and ask this question. What does my heart, what does my body need with regard to kindness, if it is the kindness of God that leads to repentance? Because so many of us as parents live under the weight of accusation, and we don't know how to access curiosity about why we're behaving the way we are, and we don't know how to access kindness. And God's voice and posture towards each one of us is endlessly kind. So those accusations are not coming from God. And if
Yeah.
they're not coming from God, then can there be something in your spirit that just says, hell no to that accusation? Yes, I hear it. Yes, it's familiar to me. Yes, it's ancient. Yes, I've been dealing with this for a year,
Yeah.
10 years, 20 years. But today, I am not going to join in giving that accusation room to breathe.
I love how you use another phrase in there. You say, I'm not going to join in the violence
Yes.
against myself.
Yes.
And I know that is a commonplace. I think for parents in general,
Yes.
I think it is a place the enemy assaults us is about what a mess we are,
Mhm.
as parents. So we go, yeah, you're right. I'm terrible at this. And so we join in the assault. But then when we have that added stress and strain and of having children who live with often serious mental illness, how we join in the refrain of, like you said, accusation and blame and recrimination. And we don't even just hear it within ourselves, it is a societal.
Right.
That's like there's a whole Greek chorus going on behind us.
Yeah.
There's society telling us how we're messing up and our kids would be better if we were better. And sometimes our spouses,
Yes.
sometimes spouses
Absolutely.
go at each other with, parenting failures, and then
Yeah.
extended family and, grandma and Aunt Susie and everybody else is telling us, well, this is really, you just can feel like an utter failure. And then we just seal it and deliver, go, yep, you're right, I am a complete failure with this. Anybody else, I honestly said this to myself more times than I could count, um especially when Matthew was younger and we did not understand much about his
Right.
illness. I remember saying to myself, somebody standing on the street corner selling pencils, in other words, a homeless
Yeah.
person trying to make a living selling pencils, could be a better parent than I am.
Right.
Oh my
Yes.
goodness, the
Yes.
ways that I accused myself. And
Yes.
well,
Yes. Yes.
yeah.
Absolutely. And so the category of not just curiosity and kindness, but the category of when, as parents, we're laboring under the weight of an accusation, when it is unrelenting, when we're feeling like a failure, our bodies, our hearts need comfort
Mm,
and they need care and they need community.
mm,
And so, what would it be like, even just it's 3 p.m. on a Tuesday and you don't have access to other people in this particular moment. What would it be like just to put your hand on your heart, to go into the bathroom, to get 2 minutes away because your body is suffering in this moment under the weight of the accusations of the kingdom of evil, and just to put your hand on your heart, your hand maybe on your cheeks, and just to say, this is hard and I am loved by God. And I'm going to, when the current crisis kind of dies down a little bit, I'm going to reach out to someone that can provide at least witness, if
Yeah.
not comforting care.
Mm.
You need that. We all need that. Whether we have mentally ill children or not, we
Yeah.
need comfort and care when we're laboring under the weight of assault and accusation.
Yeah. Well, get the book. Um, I have been so encouraged by your writing and your teaching, Adam. So I can't thank you enough, and I feel like that there will be many parents. Go back and listen to the first one that we did last year. Then make sure that you listen to this one. You as a parent are so worth
Mm.
worth knowing your worth. Does that make
Yes.
sense? You're worth
Yes.
knowing your worth.
Yes.
And God does delight in us. Would you pray? Would you pray for our parents as we close our time?
Sure. Triune God. There is extremity, there is intensity that these parents bear on a daily basis that is, is disproportionate to what many parents who don't have mentally ill children bear. And so I pray especially for these parents that they would have an extra measure of kindness and curiosity about what their bodies are enduring on a daily basis. May it be a reintroduction or an introduction, an infusion of kindness, of curiosity, and of reaching out for help when they need additional care and comfort. In the name of Jesus. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Adam. Thank you so much. I can't tell you how much your determination to know your own story has enabled thousands of other people to walk in freedom. So
Thank you.
thank you for paying attention to your own story. It helps us pay
Mhm.
attention to ours. God bless you,
You're-
brother.
Thank you, Kay. It was a privilege to be with you.
Thanks.